And that's precisely the plan from Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and all these global elites, including Mr. Build Back Better, Joe Biden. That's what they're all doing to us. It's a coordinated global effort with the COVID plandemic as the trigger to get it all started and the ongoing excuse to put it all into play, okay? We have not only been duped, but folks, call it for what it is. This is treason in high places, even here in the United States of America, which is why, again, many are sounding the alarm on what Biden is doing. He is frankly selling out our country. As you can see here, and I quote, Biden bucks the dangers of digital currency. And I quote, one of the most horrifying things is coming down the pipeline. And I refer to, the article says, to digital currency. A digital currency would in effect, listen, be the end of America. If you think the term digital concentration camp sounds extreme and over the top, you better think again. If the government decides to punish you, you're toast. You can't pay your power bill, so your electricity is shut off. You can't pay your water bill, so your water is shut off. You can't buy gas, so you can't drive. You can't pay your rent or mortgage, so you got evicted. You can't pay your property taxes, so your paid-for home is seized. You can't buy food, and forget medical care, that's out of the question. This cascading series of events can happen literally at the push of a button. You won't be jailed, but you won't have to be. Your life will become a living hell when Biden bucks are rolled out. This is not hyperbole. And another article shares this: waiting in the wings for an economic collapse is the digital dollar. Quote, imagine if there was no cash. It would be impossible to hide even the smallest transaction from government eyes. Something as simple as your morning trip to Starbucks wouldn't be a secret from government officials. Here's what we could see if the digital dollar starts being used on us on a widespread basis, right? Here's scenario number one. To protest governmental limits on personal freedom, liberty activists stage a peaceful protest around the nation's capital. That nation's leader, wanting to quell the protest and protect his power, instructs the Minister of Economic Control to reduce the protesters' CBDC balances by 50% every day until the protest ends. The protest ends shortly after the message pings on the CBDC smartphone app. That could really happen. Number two, economic growth is lagging, and the economists and the federal government suspect it's because consumer spending isn't strong enough. People are saving their money rather than spending it. So to fix this problem, the Ministry of Economic Control announces a new year-long negative interest rate for all CBDC accounts. Unspent balances of CBDC will be reduced by 10% every month. As a result, nobody saves, everyone spends, and the economists have saved the economy. Number three, another scenario. You're at the grocery store picking up some ribeye steaks because some friends are coming over for a barbecue. Well, when you get up to the counter, there's a problem. The cashier says your payment isn't going through. You check your CBDC app on your smartphone, and there was an alert. You've exceeded your monthly carbon credit usage. Please remove the following items from your grocery cart in order to proceed. Number four, you want to pick up a new firearm for hunting season. So you swing by the local sporting goods store, but when you go to transfer CBDC credits for the purchase, you get denied. The trusty CBDC app explains, quote, we've detected activity on your social media accounts that suggests you are at risk of causing harm to yourself or others, so you are prohibited from purchasing a firearm for 1 year. And the person concludes this: once we open the door to this sort of tyranny, there is no telling where it could potentially end. And I agree, which is why Robert Kiyosaki, investment guru and author of the finance book, you may have heard of it, it's a classic one out there, I guess, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he also had some choice words for Biden's executive order 14067 that puts all this into play. And I quote, here's what he said. He said it's the most treasonous act in U.S. history, and the creation of central bank digital currencies, CBDC, is, quote, communism in its purest form. And that's exactly why this former communist is warning us of the same thing.
Police in China roughing up the protesters outside of a branch of the nation's central bank. Their crime? demanding access to their own money, months after their accounts were frozen due to COVID protocols. Our next guest, who survived Mao's Marxist cultural revolution and immigrated here to the United States from China, she says this should be a warning about the evils of communism and the growing threat of totalitarianism that we face here. Virginia mother She Van Fleet joins us now. Good morning. Great to see you again, She.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming in. I mean, this is their money. Their bank accounts have been frozen since April. They need money to survive. They put it in the bank, and now they can't get it. What's your reaction to this? Many of them are being beaten because of it.
Yes, yes. Okay, first of all, it's obviously this story tells us that China's is in financial crisis, but this is not just a bank run story. And since the people that could not get the money out of the bank, that is very difficult for Americans to imagine that you can put your hard-earned money in the bank and then later told, sorry, your life saving just vanished, and the government refused to step in. I want to use this horrific incident to remind Americans that China is not a normal country. It is a communist country through and through, ever since its founding in 1949. Communists do not respect private property. They do not respect human rights and human lives. These people are not fighting for political rights. They are merely fighting for the rights to their own money. And their petition was met with such overwhelming force. And you can see that the people there are handicapped, older people, children, and even pregnant women.
It is unbelievable to see this.
And also,
go ahead.
Yes, I also want to talk a little bit about the COVID passport. Ever since the pandemic, the CCP implemented the COVID passport. Everyone has to have the app on their phone. If your code is red, that means you're COVID positive and you cannot leave your home. Ever since April, many people who went to the bank and demanded the withdrawal of their money from their account change and see that their code changed to red. So this is just horrible that the Chinese government weaponized the COVID passport.
Even if they didn't have COVID?
And used it against me.
Even if they didn't have COVID, if they were just there
the,
trying to get their money.
Yes, yes, it's total control. Weaponized passport, COVID passport. Americans should pay attention.
I would say so, but good thing they're not going to cram that down us, this COVID passport like they did with the Chinese. Yeah, that's coming next, as we'll see in a second, with a new digital currency tied to a new digital identity or digital passport, okay? You won't be able to travel to get your money, whether the red code, COVID indicator is true or not, okay? It's just another layer of communist control, techno-communism, okay? Which is why this article calls Biden's treasonous executive order that he did in secret for what it really is. Quote, nightmare on G20 street. Biden delivers us to a Chinese social credit system. Why? Because that's all this is, folks. Once again, relabeled for our global consumption. And these guys, they're masters of deceit. They're liars, okay? Unless you doubt this financial communist prison planet controlling every aspect of our individual livelihood isn't going to go global and all be tied together, you better think again. Here is the Bank of International Settlements manager, Augustin Carstens, talking about what the emergence of CBDCs will allow him and the rest of the global elites to do to us. We saw a little piece of it earlier, but now watch it again.
Our analysis on CBDC, in particular for the use of general use, we tend to establish the equivalence with cash. And there is a huge difference there. For example, in cash, we don't know, for example, who's using a $100 bill today. We don't know who is using a 1,000 peso bill today. A key difference with the CBDC is that central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability. And also, we will have the technology to enforce that. Those two issues are extremely important, and that makes a huge difference with respect to what cash is.
But it's not cash anymore, as we understand it. It's digital. And straight out of the horse's mouth, you heard him say this switch to Biden bucks here in America, or the new CBDC currency, will allow them to do this. And I quote, the central bank will have absolute control that will determine the use of that digital money, and we will have the technology to enforce that. And of course, again, that technology will be artificial intelligence, or AI. And so let me translate all that for you. All these new relabel forms of digital currencies that are being implemented around the world, including the CBDC, or Biden bucks here in America, will allow these global financial elites and Klaus Schwab and the gang to have the ability to control all the buying and selling on the whole planet, to create a one world government and a one world economy and a cashless system. Where have I heard that before? Oh, that's right. That's God's warning for us in advance in the book of Revelation from nearly 2,000 years ago. What we're seeing is, with Klaus's help, they're building the actual system to give the actual rise of the Antichrist kingdom. Okay? And for those of you who don't know, the Bank of International Settlements, or BIS, was established to collect and disperse Germany's World War I reparation payments, but by World War II, it was the primary war spoils money laundering operation for the Nazis. There you go. Klaus's background again, okay? And again, the irony today is it's effectively now the World Central Bank, or the Bank of Central Banks. The BIS is the controlling node for all the other central planning entities, such as the Fed, what's called the ECB, or European Central Bank, or the BOJ, the Bank of Japan, and on and on and on and on it goes. It literally controls most of the transfer of money in the whole world, which it uses to drive sovereign governments into debt on behalf of the IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, for purposes of control. Okay? And again, lest there be any doubt that Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, are all behind all this, here's another whistleblower blowing the lid off of that as well.
Consensus developing with the Biden administration that Putin and Russia are a threat, when actually you've got a bigger problem here with the CCP. Far more powerful than Russia, far more organized, have far more centralized control, and are far wealthier. And their military is far stronger. And we've got a real elephant in the room, and that is the increasing power of the CCP-ruled China. Chinese influence operations have been responsible for a lot of this idea that lockdowns were our solution. It was the first nation that implemented lockdowns, and then Italy and Europe followed after China, and then the rest of Europe followed after that. And Michael Senger, who's one of the signatories to that letter, has written an extensive book on this, tracing step by step, the way I've gone through receipts with you here, he's gone through step by step these influence operations where the CCP have been encouraging a draconian response to COVID and all of this technocracy that is eventually going to arise in the form of checkpoint Charlie society and central banking digital currencies.
They've been encouraging other nations to implement these.
Their model.
And how do they get away with that? Like, how do these other nations comply? They comply because of influence?
Influence operations, funding, intelligence operations, as you see.
And because of that, they're willing to impart laws that they would not normally do?
Who?
The governments that they're being influenced. The governments, like whether it's Great Britain, whether it's the United States, these governments are being influenced, in your mind.
With the help of the agenda coming from other non-state actors, such as the World Economic Forum, and their teams penetrating cabinets across the world, as Klaus Schwab said, there are some supranational interests here that exist above the nation state, working, as I said to you, it's a power grab, working to define the future in a certain direction.
And Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, and the global elites are behind it all, which is why this article is calling it for what it is. And I quote, "Beware, Biden's Build Back Better socialism bill is the Great Reset." In other words, they're all working together. It's the same thing. Okay, that is, they're working with Klaus Schwab, and it's all being put together with his political puppets like Biden, okay? And this is why Klaus and the World Economic Forum and his global elites, they keep pushing not only the COVID plandemic crisis, but now the Ukrainian crisis, because they're both ongoing manufactured crisis, to keep the ongoing ever-ending excuses to reset the whole financial system around the whole planet into this digital prison system, as you can see here. And I quote, BlackRock's Fink says Ukraine invasion, what's it do for them? Accelerates ESG and digital currency shift. It's right there. It's the old communism tactic again. Create a crisis so you can manage the outcome. And you keep these crises coming and going nonstop until you get the job done. Which is to what? Reset the whole world's economies into a digital controllable one by deliberately crashing the whole system. Okay? Which is why many people are wondering why Mr. Wannabe False Prophet himself, Pope Francis, and the Vatican are also doing this. And I quote, collapse coming. Pope Francis orders Holy See to transfer all assets to Vatican Bank. Hey, wait a second. I wonder why he's doing that. I mean, do you know something we don't know? I mean, surely you're not in on this. Yeah, right. Of course he is. As this guy shares, watch this. Does this have anything to do with the Pope's announcement that the world is already in a third world war? I mean, is this just a coincidence? No, nothing's by chance, not with these people. It's all pre-planned, prepared, foisted upon us with fancy relabeling deception. But speaking of a deliberate crisis to deliberately create a collapse, to create an excuse for a digital currency, there's just one missing detail in this evil, deceptive financial prison plan that Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and the global elites are building for us, and that is this. If it's truly going to become the same one that the Antichrist will use during the 7-year tribulation, then at some point, this digital financial prison system has to become, again, biometric, okay? Specifically with the body parts of the right hand or the forehead. Let's revisit that again. Revelation 13, 16 through 17, he also forced everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or his forehead so that no one could buy or sell unless he had the mark. But hey, again, good thing we don't see any signs of Klaus Schwab and the gang doing that as well to us, right? You know, forcing a biometric entity upon us. Yeah, right. It's almost, again, folks, like they're following a script because guess what? They are. Okay, whether they realize it or not. This really is the next step in their deceptive, evil financial prison plan that they're creating for us, or again, should I say, the actual Antichrist. Okay, in fact, they're promoting this new digital identity for everyone in one of their ongoing crisis areas called Ukraine, which nobody seems to be talking about. Watch this.
Get a COVID pass or a child's birth certificate, apply for an unemployment grant, register an individual business, or order a car number plate. Those many services and otherwise are now available for Ukrainians to receive in a pair of clicks without leaving home, thanks to DIA portal and its application. More than 11 million citizens are already using the online platform for services, but the Ministry of Digital Transformation is not about to stop. The agency has set a goal to make Ukraine the most comfortable state in the world.
Our vision of the most convenient state in the world is crystallized through certain goals. The first goal is 100% public services digital. We want to digitize all available services by 2024, make them online and introduce the principle if services do not exist online, they cannot exist offline.
7 more options have recently been added to the DIA list. Instead of hours spent in lines and dozens of papers to recalculate one's pension, one needs only about half an hour to do this via smartphone.
Для нарахування або перерахунку пенсії
In order to calculate or recalculate a pension, one will need to fill out a survey, upload the necessary documents, and apply. The liberalization of this process is particularly important in a pandemic to help seniors to prevent the additional risk of infection while staying in lines. Therefore, we know for sure this will save lives.
In addition to pension-related services, one can also apply for a subsidy on the portal in a few clicks. No other country in the world has yet repeated the success of the Ukrainian DIA.
Ukraine is the first country in the world that launched digital passports and legally equated them to ordinary paper documents. And business registration in Ukraine has one of the fastest procedures in the world. That is why Ukraine is becoming a digital transformation model for many other European countries.
Oh, there's that word again. So while we are all focused on Russia, bad guys, they're horrible to being mean to Ukraine, and that crisis is what? It's being used to turn Ukraine into a 100% totally digitized country, including a digital identity or digital passport. And just like China, that will be the model for the rest of the world to follow real soon, okay? And again, it makes you wonder if this is why Ukraine's President Zelensky is smiling and chumming up with old Klaus here, okay? What a bunch of lying deceivers, okay? We just thought it was all about supposed war against Vladimir Putin and his evil aggression, when in reality, Ukraine is a digital test bed for Klaus and his gang and his evil global elites. This is their next step, okay? They want to create a universal digital global passport with all of our COVID information and our other identity factors on it to tie us into the digital financial prison plan. In fact, here is the World Economic Forum promoting exactly that. There it is again from the World Economic Forum themselves, pushing this digital COVID passport from the get-go. Almost like it was a part of the plan from the very beginning. Yeah, because it was. But hey, don't worry. They won't track you with it. Did you see that? You liars. It uses, quote, real-time automated technology, quote unquote, okay? Of course it's going to track you in real time. Hello. Okay, but an external digital passport to identify you anywhere on the planet, that's just the first step. Again, what's the problem? You could lose that external digital passport, or then what would you do? You're shut out of the system. Or dare I say, they won't be able to track you, and they won't be able to identify you wherever you go in order to give you minute-by-minute permission, or lack thereof, for your everyday individual livelihood. I mean, can't have that, so what are you going to do? Well, this is why they've already moved to stage 2 of this universal global digital identity that connects you to their global financial prison plan. Again, just like the Bible warned about, now they're promoting, watch this, biometric digital IDs.
Implants are a very versatile technology that can be used for many different things. And right now it's very convenient to have a COVID passport always accessible on your implant.
they're promoting that in China. I wonder why. But hey, do you see the convenience there? I mean, you could lose your external digital COVID passport, but not if it's on the inside of you. I mean, if you just get that chip in your hand, then maybe at one of these parties, you know, they've been having around the world, and hey, you never have to worry about being shut out of the global financial prison planet system ever again. I mean, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, that's exactly what they want, folks. These guys are sick. They're liars, they're lying megamaniacs, they're rolling out this satanic digital plan step by step, hoping that nobody's going to catch on to what they're doing before it's too late. And again, another reason why we're doing this documentary is to expose this, okay? But this promotion of biometric implants for digital identity purposes, it's nothing new. Do the research. Here's a recent promotional video from Walletmore, again, as we saw earlier, encouraging people about the so-called benefits, including financial benefits, if you would just get one of these implants in your hand.
When was the last time you wrote an actual check or bought something with cash? Swiping and tapping our cards and our apps are not just the easiest way to spend money, they're the safest way, unless, of course, we misplace our phones or our wallets, and then it's a nightmare. It is hard to misplace your hands, however. And soon your hand may be all that you need to buy anything that you can afford and many things that you can't. Because a company called Walletmore is developing a very teeny tiny chip. You see it there in the X-ray? That should creep you out. The chip is like the ones that are found in smart credit cards or debit cards, and the chip gets embedded just under your skin and makes your whole hand a credit card. Joining me now is Wojtek Perota. He's the CEO and founder of Walletmore. Okay, Wojtek, this is so futuristic and out there, but walk me through how it actually works.
Hey, so first of all, thanks for having me. Let's look at the chip as a super small card that you can use wherever contactless payments are accepted. So it's exactly the same NFC technology, which stands for near field communication, and therefore it can be used only for the near field communication payments. So therefore you cannot be tracked, you cannot be monitored, you cannot be spied with that implant because it's exactly the same technology as credit card.
Do you have it? Wojtek, do you have it in your hand right now?
Yeah, of course. Actually, the X-ray that you saw was for my hand, and that's how it looks on my hand.
So show me your hand. Is it possible to see it at all? It's just barely standing out, right? Like it looks like maybe a little like a scar.
Yeah, as you can see, I'm popping it a little bit.
Oh man, that's crazy. Did you have a doctor insert it?
Yeah, of course, that's part of the deal because we are only building the implants. And when it comes to the installations, we want the whole experience to be as safe as possible. And therefore, we built a network of partners all across Europe and the US. So therefore, if you are ordering an implant from our site, it's of course shipped to you, but then you need to schedule the appointment with one of the specialists who will just set it up for you.
So do you use it? Like, do you go up to a cashier and say, yeah, I'll just tap my hand? And if that's the case, what's the reaction from the sales clerks?
Yeah, of course. I've been testing it myself since the very beginning. I have been the first person to get it installed. And reactions are pretty wild, to be honest. But in most cases, it turns out to be like a positive conversation, because as long as explain how it works and what's actually inside, they're pretty much optimistic about it.
Yeah, especially if I can combine my COVID passport with it all and all my other digital IDs, and so I can just waltz around in this new digital financial prison planet that Klaus and the gang are creating for me, and all I need to interact with it all or even buy and sell is my hand. Sound familiar? Yeah. It's the mark of the beast system. In fact, that really is the plan, to literally have everything tied together in these digital implant biometric identities, as you can see here. It will connect you to entities, people, devices, things, including your health care, your financial services, your food, your travel, humanitarian response, that is if you want to travel to another country, e-commerce, online purchases, social platforms, telecommunications, and don't forget that being tracked like a rat wherever you go in their new smart cities. That's their picture, folks, not mine. That's from the World Economic Forum. Okay, this is where all this push for a biometric global digital identity is headed. It's right there. They admit it. Okay, this is their plan for total control of the planet. Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and all the global elites are using the COVID pandemic and all these other crises that they keep creating to not just tie all the world's economies all together digitally for the purposes of control, but to tie also their new digital currency directly to people individually, biometrically, to control them as well, specifically in their hands or the foreheads. There's not going to be any escape, folks. Again, that's basically a fancy way of saying this is what the Bible calls the mark of the beast system, okay? And we are being pressured to go along with it all, as these whistleblowers share themselves.
Australia's banks want you microchipped. John, what's all this rubbish?
Martin, only a couple of days ago did I get an email from one of our viewers who was deeply concerned that they had received an email campaign from their bank, an Australian bank, Suncorp, who is putting this idea out there as to whether their customers want to be microchipped. And the argument was that by being microchipped, it could drive efficiencies for customers in terms of their interaction with the financial system. So we're going to get into this because I think this is a very big, shocking revelation. But we have been on a crusade, you and I, for many years about economic freedom, freedom in general, not being surveilled by government, surveilled by big banks. And obviously that's why we fought the cash ban. And we were successful in to say to the government, we want to engage in commerce without you knowing what we're doing. And now we have at least one bank in Australia saying to the customers, how about we put a microchip into your hand so that anytime you want to do banking, supposedly it's more convenient, but in reality, the bank will have all sorts of information implanted into someone's hand. It is completely nuts. And this is just another example of again, so a couple of years ago when someone would suggest something along these lines, it's a conspiracy theory. And we always hear when dangerous ideas first pop up, it's a conspiracy theory, but then they somehow become reality. And the concern is that rather than having a full open debate about where this whole agenda is going, it is a quiet, slow, creeping set of events where they because obviously the issue is if they were to, when I say they as in the establishment, big business, big government, big tech, if they were to say to the public at large, okay, this is the end state we want to take you in, I think most people would say, no way, I don't want to live in that world. So they can't tell us forthrightly. So what they're trying to do is slowly but surely take baby steps so that we don't notice, and they take us to the destination that they want to. And obviously, in the context of our last show about the World Economic Forum, I mean that's why a lot of Australians, but people around the world, have very large concerns about where is the world headed. And this whole notion that an Australian bank would say to its customers, we want to do a survey and we want to see if you would voluntarily be microchipped, completely nuts.
Well, it is crazy. I mean, I happen to know a few things internationally. That I know that there's a company in the US who's arguing that people already use mobile phones today and they have biometrics on those mobile phones, you know, fingerprint or face, whatever, right? And what that basically means is that you've got already a connectivity to do with your person and your functionality. So why not just take the next step, which is basically, you know, chip in your arm, and who needs a mobile phone anymore? And of course, there are a few high-tech people who actually have already gone down that route and actually have chipped themselves and are using it as part of, you know, their own experiments or whatever. But the idea of pushing this more generally into the population, and I can't help but say, well, you just have a chip and you have central bank digital currency, put those two things together, and what have you got?
Indeed. So Martin, just so we can demonstrate to our audience that we're not making this up, let's actually put slide 1 on the screen. So the viewer who sent this to me, her name's Lisa, and I'll just leave it at that. But I just want to quote from this email because there is something which is, I think, fundamentally wrong. So if we just look at the second sentence in the first paragraph, it says, quote, considering how much closer we are with technology, it makes sense for the next step to be keeping it inside our bodies with microchips, right?
Melissa Chimay, welcome to the Iconoclast 1-to-1. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for inviting me.
You were on the Iconoclast Roundtable, and what you said had everybody pretty spellbound at the end of that, and we've had tremendous feedback from those who watched that show, and people really wanted to know more about what you were talking about. And obviously the key message that you were giving was about the vaccine passports. So what's going on?
They're not vaccine passports. They are data passports. They are participation passports, but there's no medical reason behind these. If I had come to you 2 years ago and said, here's what the government want to do. They want to give everybody a chip. They want to put all your medical data and all your financial data onto that chip. That will be your complete ID, and they can control you or shut you out of society from that. Ideally, they'd like to put a quantum tattoo so that they can remotely medicate you. That sounds absolutely insane. That's the road that we are going down right now.
At least some people in Australia and Ireland are warning about this. They want us all to get microchipped, and COVID was the trigger, okay? Unless you doubt this microchipping of the whole planet with biometric technology to create a universal ID is not a part of the plan, this is why people are also warning that this digital identity system will also be connected to the previous mentioned digital currency systems, you know, the social credit score system or the ESG system, the CBDC systems, for even more purposes of total control of the planet, as you can see here. And I quote, digital ID will merge your identity and reputation into, quote, trust scores. And this is why, quote, governments worldwide are working in lockstep to bring in digital ID and social credit system as EU agrees to expand online censorship with Digital Services Act. And I quote from that article, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama both lobbied for the EU to back the censorship bill known as the Digital Services Act on Thursday, April 21st, 2022. So those two entities are still behind the scenes messing things up. Shocker, which tells us they too, shocker, are in all this together, okay? They're puppets of Klaus. And this is also why, quote, G20 pushes vaccine passports for all vaccines for all future international travel. Only then can you move around. Total global control with this biometric identity scheme, as you can see here.
So let's have a digital health certificate acknowledged by WHO. If you have been vaccinated or tested properly, then you can move around. So for the next pandemic, instead of stopping the movement of the people 100%, which clogged the economy globally, you know, you can still provide some movement of the people. Indonesia has achieved, G20 country has agreed to have this digital certificate using WHO standard, and we will submit into the next World Health Assembly in Geneva as the revision to international health regulation. So hopefully for the next pandemic, we can still see some movement of the people, some movement of the goods, and movement of the economy.
Won't that be great for the next plandemic? How many times you got to say that, okay? I mean, what are you planning on doing down the pike, okay? Sounds to me like they're not done with the plandemics, okay? COVID was just the beginning, just like Klaus said. Okay, but in the next one, the plan is to give everybody a digital health certificate that the World Health Organization identifies and agrees with to determine who gets to travel around the next plandemic and not get locked down so the economy won't collapse again. What a setup this is. They're a bunch of liars. And of course, the people who don't get locked down or locked out of the financial system are those who obey their mandates, including vaccinations. It's pretty slick, isn't it? Okay? And it's also pretty sick. Okay? And for even more proof of that lying scheme, this is also why, and I quote, the WHO Treaty is tied to a global digital passport and ID system. Shocker. So it's all tied together, folks. When you pay attention here, it's a setup. It's a setup step by step. They had this in the works for a long time. Don't be fooled by it, okay? And this article makes it about as blunt as you can get, and I quote, universal vaccine passports plan unites the what? The world. So there it is, okay? And you've got to make sure that you have enough money to do this, and they do, quote, World Bank creates $1 billion fund worth of dollars for what? Vaccine passports. And don't forget who's going to build it, quote, Deutsche Telekom to build global COVID vaccine verification app for the WHO, or the World Health Organization. And don't forget, you need an operating system for this, which is precisely why Bill Gates is involved in all this. He's going to make a ton of money off of all this scenario, okay? Which is why he's working with Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and the global elites, and he's saying stuff like this, okay? And this is what we see. Quote, Bill Gates explains why digital financial inclusion should be universal. Well, of course. It's great for Bill. That way, you're going to make a ton of money by universally controlling all of this, okay, with your operating system. And that's why Gates has been calling for a global ID 2020 for a long time now. And I quote, we need to get it right. Everybody needs a, quote, good health pass. Good health pass? Wait a second. You mean like what Hitler did. He put out something called the Gesundheit Pass medical card for his people because he didn't have microchips, like Bill and Klaus and the gang do today. But hey, wait a second. I mean, we still say Gesundheit today, when somebody sneezes, but we thought it meant, oh, well, that's German for God bless you. No, Gesundheit really was Hitler's health control scheme, okay? And once again, nothing new under the sun. Shocker, Klaus's Nazi background keeps coming back up into play, even in this. Okay? And for even more proof of this, that Bill Gates' Hitlerian scheme is to get even more rich off of this by providing the computing platform to run all these digital IDs around the whole planet. This is why we also see his company, Microsoft, involved in this. Quote, Microsoft, the ID 2020 Alliance, Universal Digital Identification, and you. Notice again, it's universal, which is why Bill Gates is also saying we will soon have this biometric reality. Quote, Bill Gates believes the electronic tattoo will become a reality. A mark on your body. Which is why this guy is saying about Bill Gates and his deceptive, greedy Hitlerian behavior.
India is known as the most populous democracy in the world. It's also home to the largest digital biometric ID system in the world. According to a report from Reuters last week, tens of millions of children in India are at risk of being excluded from school this year because they're not linked up to India's biometric digital ID system. Aadhaar, India's federally operated biometric digital ID system, collected the names, fingerprint scans, and eye scans of 1.2 billion Indians. According to the report, India's 2009 Right to Education Act provides the legal right to free education for all children from 6 to 14 years old. But apparently, only children willing to submit to invasive biometric recording and tracking are able to enjoy their own rights. Dipa Sinha, a professor at India's Ambedkar University, told Reuters that requiring the biometric digital ID for public school puts the onus on the citizen and makes it much harder for them to access their own rights. The report referenced an 11-year-old named Shifa, who has been barred from going into the 6th grade because she does not have the Aadhaar biometric digital ID. Her parents made several attempts to get her one, but between the hoops and the behemoth bureaucracy, she fell through the cracks. Now Shifa is simply learning to read and write at home, using the newspaper. Without Aadhaar, we have no other option, her mom said. But Aadhaar is more than just a system that coerces people to submit their personal biometrics to receive their own rights. It's actually a giant social credit system, lauded by political heavyweights and global thought leaders. Not much Western attention has been put on the Aadhaar system, because it's been overshadowed by their geopolitical foe, China, and its social credit system. According to the Huffington Post, which received documents under India's RTI Act, or Right to Information Act, the Indian government has integrated data collected by Aadhaar to establish a 360-degree database that automatically tracks citizens when they move between cities, change jobs, or buy new property. Bill Gates, of all people, explained that the Aadhaar system is a huge asset for India and branded the creator of the system, Nandan Nikalani, a partner of the World Economic Forum, a hero.
My friend Nandan Nilekani is one of India's best-known entrepreneurs. He led the creation of the world's largest biometric ID system
Aadhaar is the world's largest digital ID system and entirely based using biometrics to ensure uniqueness. Our enrollment was very simple: name, address, date of birth, sex, email ID and phone number if you wish, and the biometrics, the 10 fingerprints of both the hands, the iris of both the eyes, and a photograph.
Despite the dystopian possibilities, elected officials in the US are trying their best to force a giant biometric digital ID system on the entire population under the guise of inequity. Illinois Congressman Bill Foster recently introduced the Improving Digital Identity Act, which calls for the public sector, namely Homeland Security, to work with the private sector to develop a giant digital biometric ID infrastructure for the United States. Congressman Foster explained to a Gates-funded vaccine ID initiative, ID 2020, that collecting private biometric information on all citizens could be leveraged by the private sector to generate profits.
That once the government has taken that essential step of taking those biometrics, there will be huge opportunities for the commercial sector to leverage that. And so to try to get this all started, I recently introduced a bill with 4 bipartisan co-authors on the bill, H.R. 8215, the Improving Digital Identity Act. If enacted, this bill would take a number of steps to really prioritize the development of digital ID in this country.
Foster is trying to push this bill through under the guise of inequity by explaining that the system will make it easier for unbanked individuals, apparently a new marginalized group, to access financial services, cloaking the invasive ID system in woke language. In a U.S. House Committee on Financial Services hearing in July, Elizabeth Rainiers warned that biometric digital ID programs like Aadhaar are being used as giant surveillance tools, establishing social credit systems.
My name is Elizabeth Rainiers. I'm a professor of the practice and founding director of the Notre Dame IBM Technology Ethics Lab at the University of Notre Dame. We must avoid building digital ID systems and infrastructure in a way that would further expand and entrench the surveillance state, as do the national identity systems in India or China. For example, the Aadhaar number in India, and that single identifier is able to track your activity across all facets of your life, from employment to healthcare to school to pretty much everything you do. And so that's another area where you can't retain sort of autonomy over specific domains of your life.
But it's this all-encompassing aspect of the system that makes people like Bill Gates so adoring of it. Addressing India's policymakers on their achievements with Aadhaar, Gates explained the usefulness of social credit systems.
Over time, all of these transactions will create a footprint. And so when you go in for credit, the ability to access your history, that you've paid your utility bills on time, that you've saved up money for your children's education, all of those things in your digital trail, accessed in an appropriate way, will allow the credit market to properly score the risk.
Gates is trying to bring the Aadhaar social credit system he's so fond of to the rest of the world. Gates partnered with the World Bank and launched their ID4D project with the declared purpose of bringing the Aadhaar approach to other countries. To date, the World Bank has invested $1.5 billion into the ID4D initiative, with the official aim of creating identification systems using 21st century solutions.
According to their 2021 annual report, ID4D is currently helping 49 national governments establish digital ID systems, or 470 million people.
And it's spreading around the world, including here in America, and Bill Gates stands to become one of the richest people ever because of it. What a scam, man. They're all a bunch of liars, okay? Unless you think that Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum is not behind all this, along with Bill Gates, okay, this is why the World Economic Forum is promoting this on their website as well. And I quote, "What does a good digital ID look like?" Because, folks, that's the plan for all of us. And this is why this article tells it for what it is. Quote, "Great Reset in Action, World Economic Forum's Communist Digital Identity Scheme." So there it is again. This is all this is, folks. And I quote, "The World Economic Forum's digital identity scheme is laying the foundation for a global social credit system that will give them the power to control citizens and punish those that they deem, quote, untrustworthy. In other words, those who don't obey whatever they tell you to do, like in the coming Antichrist system." And I quote, "In February 2022, Klaus Schwab, World Economic Forum, released a new report, quote, Advancing Digital Agency, the Power of Data Intermediaries, which lays out their plans for the creation of the fourth industrial revolution, a fusion of physical, digital, and biological world. The unelected World Economic Forum globalists have capitalized on COVID and are using the vaccine passports to lay the foundation for widespread digital identity adoption. This is just one more part of the Great Reset in action. Or again, how many times do we got to say it? What the Bible calls the Antichrist kingdom in the 7-year tribulation. Okay? And I quote, "These passports by nature serve as a form of digital identity. Such a digital identity can be used, among other things, to access your health insurance treatments, monitor health devices and your phones, open a bank account, and carry out financial transactions. You know, buying and selling." Quote, "With your digital pass, you can book trips and go through customs with it. You will also be able to use such a digital ID for shopping, social media, voting, filing tax returns, and collecting benefits, everything." According to the World Economic Forum report, digital identity schemes include biometrics, there it is again, such as a national identifier number. Gee, I wonder what number they're going to use in the ultimate system. Maybe it's 666 or something? I mean, is this crazy or what? All right before our very eyes, and the Bible is the only book on the planet that's been warned about it for 2,000 years now. Okay? No wonder the enemy does not want people in that book, i.e. the Bible. Okay? It exposes the whole plan. And again, if you're not saved, man, you better get saved now. Please, I beg you, I encourage you, ask Jesus Christ right now to forgive you of all your sins before it's too late. This is not a game. Okay? But as you can see, the day is coming when all the global elites are, they're going to have all the power, folks, to not only identify you and microchip you, but they will shut off your chip if you don't obey. And they've been using lies and deceit, creating crises after crises for a long time to get the job done, as this whistleblower shares.
This is Aaron Russo, a filmmaker and former politician. To his left is Nicholas Rockefeller of the infamous Rockefeller banking and business dynasty. After maintaining a close friendship with Nicholas Rockefeller, Aaron eventually ended the relationship, appalled by what he had learned about the Rockefellers and their ambitions.
I got a call one day from an attorney woman I knew, and she said, "Would you like to meet one of the Rockefellers?" I said, "Sure, I'd love to." And we became friends, and he began to divulge a lot of things to me. So he said to me one night, he said that there's going to be an event there, and out of that event, you're going to see, we're going to go into Afghanistan, so we can run pipelines from the Caspian Sea. We're going to go into Iraq to take the oil and establish a base in the Middle East, and we're going to go into Venezuela and try and get rid of Chavez. And the first two they've accomplished. Chavez they didn't accomplish. And he said you're going to see guys going into caves looking for looking for people that they're never going to find. You know, he was laughing about the fact that you have this war on terror. There's no real enemy. He's talking about how by having this war on terror, you can never win it because it's an eternal war. And so you can always keep taking people's liberties away. And I said, how are you going to convince people that this war is real? He said, but the media can convince everybody it's real. I mean, you know, it's just that you keep talking about things. You keep saying it over and over and over again, and eventually people believe it. You know, you created the Federal Reserve in 1913 through lies. You create 9/11, which is another lie. Through 9/11, then you're fighting a war on terror, and now all of a sudden you go into Iraq, which was another lie, and now they're going to do Iran. You know, and it's all one thing leading to another, leading to another, leading to another. Now, I would say to them, what are you doing this for? What's the point of this thing? You have all the money in the world you ever want. You have all the power. I said, you know, you're hurting people. It's not a good thing. And he would say, what do you care about the people for? Take care of yourself and you take care of your family. And then I said to him, what are the ultimate goals here? He said, the ultimate goal is to get everybody in this world chipped with the RFID chip and have all money be on those chips and everything on those chips. And if anybody wants to protest what we do or violate what we want, we just turn off their chip.